All right. Perfect. Thank you so much for doing this, Megan Comey. Can you go ahead and just go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll jump in and start to get into some questions.
Okay, well, once again, thank you so much for having us. We are very excited to be here. I'm Meg. I'm Komi Vora, and we are sisters and co-founders of women's contemporary vegan and sustainable lifestyle brand Delicate Rayn.
Love it.
We also run a blogazine called DR Diary. Basically, it's like a conscious sanctuary where we really cover like all things vegan, sustainable food, fashion, travel, lifestyle, and more for your higher self.
Perfect. And what were you ladies doing before you started this?
Besides wishing and scheming and how we could build a business together, I was just working more in like the tech side of things at like a tech startup doing like business development stuff. I was actually working for an indie jewelry designer that was also kind of getting into like shoe development, like shoe designing and stuff like that. And so I kind of started seeing like the back end of things of like how, the whole design process goes and like what it entails to have like an online business. At the time, I still had no idea this is like kind of what we wanted to do. Those dots connected later for me, but that's pretty much like what I was doing. We have no background in fashion at all. I actually have a business background, and Meg has a business and communications background. So it was more of like a passion project that turned into a business because it was something that we had always just been doing growing up, was redesigning, upworking, actually Indian clothes. That's what we would do when we would travel back to India. And then it transitioned kind of more and more into like our Western wear as well. We would do like a lot of these hybrid creations. Something that, funny enough, we're thinking of reintroducing and kind of bringing back for real this time. Mm-hmm. So it's exciting to kind of see that circularity come, full circle.
And what do you think is kind of like, tell me, what did you take away from those like trips going back to India? Like, how does that show up in your work today?
I think I didn't want to. Oh no, I was going to start. So one thing about India is that there is so like the quality and like the craftsmanship of stuff is like impeccable. For that to be found here, I feel like it's just been lost like through all these generations, and the amount of time that they actually like take to, create a design. Even if you travel back more into time, like they were the ones that were like starting like the plant-based dyes and using like vegetable dyes and all that kind of stuff. And so seeing all that early on was really incredible because out here, in the Western culture, none of that really existed. No one was really talking about that. I mean, another layer to that is also just like the culture and the lifestyle India kind of resonates with. So we were raised on foundations of Jainism and Hinduism. And that plays a very large part in how our company was kind of built and how we really connected the dots because Jainism follows principles of ahimsa, which translates to no violence towards any living being. And then Hinduism also has deep rooted compassion. And the whole idea is to really kind of put out products that embody that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And how did you guys like officially start? Because I was trying to do a little bit of homework, and it sounds like you guys you've been doing it for a little bit, but like, what was like your origin story? Like, how did you get like the very first customers?
Um, it was, it was a lot of research first, yeah, right? So it was like, there's the fashion side of stuff, but then there's also like the vegan side of stuff. So there's like a big community there where a lot of people, they live this lifestyle. veganism doesn't just end with like diet, right? Like there's once you really start like dabbling into it, you see how like other areas in your life can be affected by it. And there's a whole community there. And so I think when you started doing like when we started doing like a lot of research, and we started reaching out to like different charities, attending different like, niche community gatherings, animal marches, just stuff that really resonated with us, and started talking to the community directly. And then, through word of mouth, making the connections. Sometimes you're pitching ideas, sometimes it's organically happening because you've like made that introduction. And so I think it was like a combination of both.
Yeah, a lot of word of mouth, and then also just like outreaching and then kind of planting the seed with other people. And then once they started remembering, they would kind of send people our way. And so it was very organic. That was like something that was really important to us too, was kind of, lead with the style, and then these little nuggets that you get kind of as or gifts with purchase. It's like it's cruelty free, it's no animals harmed, it's also eco-friendly. And so that was kind of our idea. We never really started out the gate though to be a vegan company, like, by vegans for vegans. Our idea was always to have these really strong principles in place, but to kind of open up the market, if you will, kind of, speak to an audience that might not necessarily gravitate towards that right away.
Yeah. And what's been kind of like your top selling products, and why do you think it is?
We find that a lot of people love like the vegan leather mini skirts. We offer it in a variety of colors, and they're different leathers too. So like the texture and stuff is different, and we feel that it does so well because it's very versatile. So you can dress it up, you can dress it down, you can wear it with like multiple tops, blazers, like however you want to do it. You can wear it night through day. Like it's really an amazing piece.
Yeah, because the other thing is like we're not here to sell, we're speaking quality over quantity. So our whole idea is to be more timeless and to continue to provide staple pieces that people can continue to build wardrobes around. Like we don't want you to have to buy something from us and then have to also buy 30 other things to make the fit. Like we want it to just be there and have it be a part of your capsule wardrobe.
And what's like from a distribution and business standpoint, how do you guys sell the product? Is it mainly online, or do you sell through retail distribution? Talk to me a little bit about like how you get the sales.
Primarily, it is direct to consumer. So we really heavily focus more on like building like online relationships with our customers. We have been in select boutiques before, and we just feel for us, sometimes we don't mind being in other retail stores, but then after a while, we just slowly started focusing on us because we really wanted to have that customer relationship. And it really helps us like get more insight to what customers want, what they're thinking about, how they can, and they help us too, with like creativity in terms of like what's needed, what do they want in the marketplace, what's missing. And we really, really like that one-on-one with them.
Yeah. And what would you say is like, I guess from a, media standpoint, because I know you are on the scene. So how did that like happen? Was that something that you were intentional about, where you knew you wanted to, get on stages and stuff? And just to kind of set the for other listeners, we were able to share the stage and speak recently at an event together. And I definitely got the sense that you all are, absolute professionals and understand.
Oh.
We appreciate
that.
that.
Likewise,
Yeah.
I learned a lot from you guys on the panel. So, wants to, do more, what would you say to them, or how did you do it?
Okay, So I think it's a two-part question. So first, I think we'll answer kind of how we fell into that, because we definitely never started out to be like the face of the company, you know, or just to be doing that. Once we kind of, you know, as Comey mentioned earlier, when we would be kind of speaking to people or at these like very specific animal related or vegan type of events and whatnot, we would be, you know, talking to a lot of people. And people kind of, anytime that there was like a press inquiry, or you know, somebody wanted to kind of learn about the product and understand like what the company was actually doing, it kind of always fell into, well, wait a second, what's the brand story? And once they understood what was happening with that, you know, it's two sisters, um, you know, that were raised on a specific lifestyle that kind of took their upbringing to create a company, that really resonated with a lot of people, and people found that component very interesting. And so anytime we would continue to get press, it kind of turned into, well, yes, we want to talk about the product, and sure, we're okay to showcase product, but we want to actually talk to one of you or both of you. And that's kind of in a nutshell how the press stuff started happening, and how it's kind of like parlayed into this whole other kind of lifeline of the company, because which is very exciting, because I think it really gives us an opportunity to educate other people about how you can have all these, how you can live a cruelty-free lifestyle. It doesn't just start with your, it doesn't just stop with your wardrobe. It can go into like fashion, food, beauty, skincare, and stuff like that.
You know, another thing, a personal thing that I'll share with you is that I, growing up, was extremely shy. And so when it came to like any public speaking or anything like that, like I would do anything and everything to have an excuse not to do it. And I would really just want to run away. I would cry. It was so much anxiety and stress for me. But once we started this company, and realizing the mission that was behind the brand and what we wanted to do in terms of like the purpose of the brand, how we wanted to educate people and show people what was really going on behind the scenes of the fashion industry, and like, you know, where veganism is, and like what's happening in like the supply chains, and how, you know, how animals are treated, how humans are treated in the factories and all of that. I realized that the message was bigger than my fear. And so I told myself, you know, that I have to like go out and like not let this fear hold me back, especially if I want to, you know, move forward and spread this message. And so, you know, even now, I mean, Meg's like amazing, and I'm so fortunate to have her. But it's like there's times when I'm still like, oh my God, like I don't, you know, so thank you when you gave us that compliment. But even for us, it's like it's still a scary ride. But we know that if that's the message that you want to leave in the world, like you need to go out there and do it.
Oh wow. I mean, that's a mic drop right there. You said your message is bigger than your fear. I mean, that's
Mhm.
good. I'm gonna have
Thank you.
to license that one from you. That's really good.
Thank you.
But no, that I mean, I think that's the reality of it. Like you say, I mean, when you have a strong why, you will kind of, you know, run through a wall. You know, you have these different scenarios. Like if you know, had your child or something, like, well, they start out with like, would you cross a bridge that's like, you know, 100 stories in the air for, you know, $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000? And it's like, no, it's really not worth it. But it's like, if your child or your loved one is like on the other building, then you would do it in a heartbeat. So once you have
Yeah.
enough why, you can achieve anything. So okay, that's good. What would you say is what's like your manufacturing process like? How are you producing this stuff? How are you sourcing? What's the whole situation there for you guys?
So we work with a few different types of fabrications. We work with a lot of dead stock that we will source from specific warehouses that specialize in that type of fabrication. So the kind of stuff that they get is only, you know, dead stock, vintage, overrun, stuff like that. And it's really helpful to be able to have access to that kind of stuff because that's what allows us to also do limited edition runs in specific items, made to order stuff. So, you know, that's a specific model we have. And then we also have a few vendors that specialize in, you know, eco-friendly, recycled, or sustainable materials that speak to the cruelty-free aspect as well. And those are people that we've kind of just, you know, when you attend fabric conventions or fabric shows, there's like textile things that you can go into, and that really opens up the door and your eyes to so many different types of textiles that are available that you can kind of use depending on what you want to make. So that's something that's been a really big resource for us when kind of figuring out the kind of textiles we want to work with. Something that we are really looking into right now is fashion circularity. So really going more into zero waste and using things that already exist to create new stuff. So kind of like upcycling. That's kind of I don't want to say focus has shifted, but it has become as equally important, because something that we've really realized is we don't want to solve one problem by creating another. And so to kind of stick true to that, we want to have eyes on both areas.
Yeah, and just to add on just a little bit to what Meg's saying is that we also manufacture everything in Los Angeles. So it was really important for us to make sure that everything was local. You know, one also being like for sustainability reasons, but another is also that we can like for us, it's important to have the relationships, right? So I know that we had mentioned earlier, you know, we want to have the relationship one-on-one with our customers, but it's also important to have that relationship with our manufacturers and like know who is actually making our product, being able to go into the factory and oversee the working conditions and just kind of like, you know, building it as a team versus like, hey, this is what I want and just tell me when the turnaround time is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even before like you pick a manufacturing partner, it's also being really aware of what kind of long-term relationship you want to have, right? Are they even capable of manufacturing the kind of things that you might see down the line? Because this person might be good for a one-off, but then who's somebody that you can work with consistently? And so we had a long trial of going into different factories and different you know, sample makers and even pattern makers and stuff, just to make sure that we were building a team that we could not only be excited to work with, but like be proud of. You know, all of us want to build together.
And what's working right now on the marketing side? How are you getting people to know about the company? How do you, you know, bring in new customers or let your existing customers know, you know, that you have these lovely items available?
We do a lot on social media. That's probably one of our biggest boosters of awareness. We do get a lot of new inquiries and traffic through Pinterest. That's a platform that we're really taking a lot more time to focus on and just become a little more consistent and persistent on that platform, because that's seemed to do a lot better than we expected it to do. So, you know, we don't know everything either.
It's a lot of trial and error. And there's a misconception too. A lot of the times, like I know it can get super overwhelming with so many different like social media outlets that are opening up, and people think that I have to get on everything in order to get my name out there. And it's like, well, in the beginning, you might want to trial it out and see what resonates and what sticks. But the ones that stick, continue with that, because that's usually probably where your customer base is, and you might actually enjoy doing that platform over something that you might not necessarily understand. Because like Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, they might all overlap to some extent, but they are very different.
I mean, one thing that we've also learned though too, and this is even for anybody that might be curious on kind of how to start or like what to do, whenever you have a company or a product that has impact or purpose as the driving force, or it's kind of like behind your whole principle, it's really important to kind of lead with the educational component of that as well, because that's where you can make a lot of your content. And that's the kind of stuff that does very well on Pinterest, and Instagram, obviously, too, and TikTok. But for us, especially on Pinterest, because if you're someone that can understand how to marry value with aesthetics, you have a winning combination for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And when it comes to just like growth and just development, what type of mentors or like what types of leaders do you guys like either follow or have gotten like just direct access to along your journey?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think I look at different people for different reasons.
Yeah.
So, if I want to do something more in like business or personal development, let's say, I might have a direct conversation with my dad or my mom, or I really, really enjoy listening to podcasts such as like Ed Millett or Lewis Howes, Bob Proctor. If it's something that's more like in my, spiritual, personal development, I really, really enjoy Abraham Hicks, Neville Goddard, Dr. Joe Dispenza, some, just and it's like I'm religious about it, right? So it's like, Tony Robbins, stuff like that. Like you just always want to be in that mindset, where you're just constantly getting like positivity and like empowerment and motivation, where it like and sparks like something that you can move forward with.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of echo what she was saying, I think it really depends what your mood is at that moment or kind of what you're seeking. So a lot of times on the business side of stuff, I will often listen to someone named Liz Tran. She has a podcast called Reset. And she, by trade, is a really big coach and mentor to execs, especially like in the tech industry. And, she kind of gives advice and teachings based on like Zen Buddhism, but then like marries that with entrepreneurship stuff. So she's a great one to listen to. And then, there's How I Built This. I feel like that's a common one that a lot of people listen to, but you get a lot of inspiration from the stories you hear on that podcast.
Yeah, that's really good. No, you guys are following the right people for sure. I was going to ask you, what is your biggest challenge?
Is this professionally, personally, or?
It could be professionally.
I think sometimes, well,
No, go ahead.
okay. Like, I don't want to take that away from you. I think, okay, so I believe there's two things. One, I think sometimes it's finding the right people to work with that really, really understand your brand and your mission. Also aesthetics. So sometimes like we've experienced where someone's really amazing at great ideas that work for us, but their execution is not on brand. And so teaching somebody aesthetics is very, very hard, or vice versa. They don't really understand the brand's tone, but their aesthetics are on point. And finding someone that understands all of that is, it can be quite challenging. Another thing that I would say is challenging is sometimes asking for help.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's very easy for me personally to give and support, but to actually sit down and ask for help, I think that can be sometimes frightening. You know, it's sometimes, how do you go and really ask, you know, especially if somebody thinks like everything, you have it all together, you have it all figured out. And it's like, no, no one ever has it all figured out. But just to actually go and ask for help, I think
It's kind of anxiety inducing because a lot of times, I mean, I think we're also in a very unique situation where, yes, we're family, we're sisters, and we actually do get along, you know, like we would be friends outside of this, if, even if we weren't business partners, but we do rely on each other a lot for things. And so it's kind of like asking for outside help or, you know, really being like, okay, you know what, we need more than just you and I. That can feel super overwhelming. And we're just so used to having each other and, you know, doing stuff with each other and for each other and divvying it up. So
And how do you guys kind of like, who's like, I guess, what am I trying to say? If you guys are like, do you have a skill like separately that one of you kind of focuses on and then the other takes the other side? Like, so does one of you like kind of run with like sales and marketing and then the other one handles like production and manufacturing operations? Or how do you guys like divide the labor?
So we definitely are always aware of everything that's happening. So it's not a situation where it's so split that like if something were to happen and the other person was not there, the other person would be clueless. So we've kind of kept it to a point where we're definitely aware, but yes, there are specific delegations, you know, like I do a lot more of the execution on like the social media and the marketing and more of the actual production side of things, like if you know there's like manufacturing or certain things in that realm, because she's really really good at the ideation of things. So it's kind of like she'll have like the strategies or like specific proposals. So it's a really good balance.
Got it. No, that's cool. And I was going to ask you another question, and I might go in a different direction, but strengths. What would you say is like your top strength?
I would say my top strength would be, I'm I'm a good learner. I never stop thinking that I know everything. I'm very open to criticism. I'm really open to asking questions. Maybe not necessarily help all the time, but questions for sure. I'll do as much research as I possibly can on anything and everything. And I think I have a really, really good memory. Like sometimes that can hurt me because sometimes it's like I don't need to remember that.
Right.
But I for the most part it's worked in my advantage.
Yeah, I think I'm also a good student because I feel like you need to constantly be learning and you never want to feel like you're the smartest person in the room. There's always something to learn from any experience or place you're people you're with. But I also think I'm a really good listener. You know, so if something's missing, something isn't being done correctly, someone feels like they need to talk about something, they just don't know where to start. I feel like I can really sit with you, whether it's in a group or one on one, and get it to a point where now the person does feel really comfortable. We can have a conversation about it, we can move forward, we can come up with solutions together.
And now that I mean, you guys have already built your business and whatnot, but if you had to start over again, where would you start in 2023?
It's a really good question. Um,
I
you can take it. I feel like I know what you're gonna say, but go ahead.
okay, to be quite honest, I don't know. I don't know necessarily with what path I would go on, but I know for sure it would be something that has to advocate for a more compassionate world. So, that would be with the message that I was talking about earlier, where, it's really advocating for humanity, for animals, for the planet. To me, I just want to be that source, that vessel that really like helps like more compassion in the world, and whatever form that would be in. That's just what would touch my heart.
And where do you think you want to be like in the next 5 years?
In a nutshell, this is probably not the answer that you're looking for, but happy. I think happiness is the most important thing. I think no matter what avenue you go in, I want to thoroughly and feel very, very fulfilled and satisfied with whatever it is that I'm doing. And I think happiness is like the ultimate goal, and the continued happiness.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to kind of go back to what you were saying a little before in terms of what you might do to, if you were to start it all over again. I think one thing that I know that everyone does, and I still am like learning to move past it, is to be such a perfectionist that it gets into wasting time. So I think if we were to ever build new again, it would be more like, you know what, it does not matter, because putting something out and being able to correct that is better than sitting there for 10 years figuring out, no, that's the wrong color, the logo doesn't look good, this font doesn't look right. I just think we get into this mindset, especially when you've been working so long on something, that you want it to just be so specific when you put it out, and you don't realize that you will not and cannot know everything. And if you try to do it that way, you're always going to set yourself up for failure, disappointment. You have to be able to learn to let go, put something out, learn from that, because the only way you can go from there is up. And I think that that's really important, is to really be mindful of the time that can be potentially wasted. So that's the only thing we cannot buy, the one thing you will never get back. So
What do you think people get like misunderstood in your industry?
I think the most challenging thing specifically in the fashion industry is the way that they've been operating for all these years. They're very traditional in their ways. In terms of it's not really until recently, even people were viewing sustainable and vegan clothing as cool, right? Like a lot of the times when those words were used, people had a misconception of what it looks like. And so they kind of wanted to turn their face. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to even like hear about it, because they just automatically thought that it was going to be ugly. It was going to be boring. And I think it's come a long way, but there's a lot more work to be done.
yeah, I think a lot of people, it's funny because you set out to correct one thing, and I feel like we're almost at a juncture now where it's been completely overcorrected and hijacked to a point where nobody even knows if what people are leading with is authentic, is it greenwashing, is it fraudulent. We have no idea at this point, because right now it's very saturated. Everyone feels like they need to jump on the eco wagon. And while that's brilliant and amazing for everyone that has been spreading this message for so long and genuinely believes in it, but it's also kind of tainting the waters. And now it's getting a little confusing for consumers who may never have heard of these terms or aware of how to consume in this way, that you can kind of like pull the wool over their eyes and they don't know any better. So now it's a lot of like unlearning for people. And that's a different conversation that I think a lot more people need to be participating in, is how to kind of teach people to break through all that noise and really lay out what is correct and what isn't, and the kind of things that people can do that doesn't involve buying their way to sustainability, right? Because you're not going to actually buy your way to sustainability. It's more of like a mindset and just how you consume in your everyday living. It's not about spending $10,000 on an eco-friendly handbag, right? So I think that's the next big challenge that people really need to tackle is unlearning and making sure that how you're moving forward in a way, if you want to be a conscious consumer, what does that really look like?
And how do you handle the kind of the question that Jonathan even posed? If you remember on the panel, we were talking a little bit about like, it's almost like that Patagonia message of don't buy this thing. And then it's like people buy that thing. So like, how do you handle that when you're presented with that as like it's like a parallel, or it's like a dichotomy or almost of what you're, what you create versus like, do we need more stuff? And like, how do you guys handle that conversation?
Internally, that's something we've been having now for a few years. Um, I think that is really challenging because, yes, from a business perspective, it's always like about making money, how to scale, what's the next big thing you can release to like keep you relevant, right? But then on the other hand of that, it's like, okay, it just really goes back to what we were talking about. It's like, are you solving one problem, but then creating another? And I think that just what we think, I think at this point is kind of like there is a way to exist in this conversation and kind of be a part of the solution if you have specific things in place. And I think that really speaks to the whole fashion circularity concept, going more zero waste, being more mindful of how to use things that already exist to create new versus just doing new. I think that's where a lot of these uh, fast fashion brands are kind of, it's like, how can you be that, but then also be eco-friendly, right? It's kind of like this weird paradox. So I think that's the conversation that a lot of us are going to start having if they're not already having it. I think more publicly. I think internally everyone's been having it because we at the end of the day, you don't want to look like the hypocrite either.
I think another important thing that Delicate Rayn does though as well is we are seasonless. So we're not sitting here producing like new collections like every season. Mm-hmm. And that's always been something that's been important to us too, because that goes back to, us having timeless pieces in your wardrobe, not having to like buy 1,000 things. Another thing that also we really look forward to as well is we work with like dead stock materials. So it's not like you're overproducing. Once that material is done, that's it. And also one-off pieces, yeah, right? So that's also like, that's a special piece for that person. And then you also feel like you're unique wearing it because nobody else has something like that in their wardrobe. They can't have that. That's a one-of-a-kind piece specifically for that one person. So I think it's just like finding different creative ways to, still be mindful for like all these like elements, but also making sure that you don't have to solve everything. Yeah, that's the thing, because it's like that becomes so overwhelming. And I feel like when someone's starting out and they think that, okay, I have to do all these things in order to have a company, you'll never start. And we're learning as we go, because we initially started more specifically focused on veganism. And so for us, that really stuck home because we were lifelong vegetarians, and the animals, all of that like really like was shown in our upbringing. So to us, that's what initially was on the forefront when we started the company. And as we evolved and we became, we're still students as well, we started realizing that we need to focus a lot also on the sustainability aspect. And so that just kind of organically happened as well.
Well, you kind of like work with the tide, right? So I'll never forget, like when we first started, someone had introduced us to a writer at an extremely well-known newspaper. I won't say the exact one, but it's everyone knows what it is. And the first, she asked us a few questions about the company, what was like, she's like, I heard it's very purpose driven. What's the mission? So we explained to her, the whole thing is like, we're taking animals out of the fashion equation, everything's vegan. And we gave her the whole spiel about no animals harmed and whatnot. And she literally was like, okay, that's all great and stuff. She's like, no one really cares though, because leather's really in right now. So she's like, are you guys, what's the eco-friendly standpoint of it? And we were like, well, yes, our leather is eco-friendly, because it already was from day one, but that wasn't like what we were leading with. And so that was such a lesson in that moment that kind of made us think, all right, you know what? We need to include more of this in the narrative, and we need to kind of be mindful of what people are seeking. And if you already have that and you can present it, then we need to start talking about that as well. And so, you get this conflicting advice where it's like, you need to, like she was saying, you need to check every single box in order to be relevant. No, let's check a few of the main boxes and do it well. And then you can see if you can check other boxes. But we were so focused on one box without realizing we were checking other boxes. And then once we realized that, yes, we need to lead with that too, it kind of opened up the door to a lot more opportunities.
Yeah, that's real good. How do you all kind of stay organized? How do you, do you have routines? Do you go with what comes your way? How do you make it through a day?
Oh, I'm big on the routines. I have a very, very specific morning routine, and I think that's so important to set your day. So typical morning, I wake up and I do I do a meditation, and I do breath work. And then I will do like, some sort of like yoga stretches, something to like, really just have some movement in my body. I'll work out. So sometimes that's different, right? Like sometimes I'll actually go like take a workout class, like Pilates or HIIT or something like that. And other times, like depending on how I'm feeling, because every morning I'll check in with myself, asking myself, how am I feeling? And that leads into like the meditation, affirmation, stuff like that. And I'll simply sometimes just go on a walk. And if I'm going on a walk, either I don't listen to anything, because that's my time with myself and just to kind of like check in and see like where my head's at. Or sometimes I'll utilize that time and I'll listen to a podcast, an audiobook, something very positive. If I'm going to listen to any kind of music, it's going to be something that's more of binaural beats, something that's more like uplifting, to align whatever's happening within me. And I never check my phone. So I'll take my phone with me, but it's always on do not disturb. And then it's not until a certain point in the morning is when I'll check in and I'll look at my text messages. I'll look like at my emails and stuff like that, because I don't want anyone to have access to me until I'm fully aligned with myself. Because if I'm not going to give to myself that time, then I have nothing else to give to somebody else. And I want to, work out, kink out any of those energies until I am like fully balanced within, and then I'll, start my day. At night, I always do a gratitude journal. So it allows me to like reflect on the day and just really be present in the moment and think about everything that I'm like grateful for that happened that day, or just in general. And then sometimes, like I'll set intentions for the next day too. So it's kind of like how I foresee my day to be the next day. And if I have something specific that I'm doing, I just kind of like meditate and pray on that. And I feel like gratitude is so important, and, really taking the time out to block out the noise and understand like, what is it that you want, right? That's like the most challenging part sometimes to ask yourself, because if you don't know what you want, you don't really have that guidance or clarity on what you're really working towards. So I'm really, really big on routines. And I also think that intermittent fasting is really important too. So I typically don't even have my first meal until 12 p.m. And then I stop eating at 8 p.m. And then that helps me sleep better. And so my body's not like overworking itself. And it allows me to just relax and go into a better place.
I am not as big on routines. She's very stringent. I have dabbled in them before. I found myself, though, getting mad at myself sometimes, like if it didn't go as exactly as planned, and I would just be in a headspace that wasn't going to be productive. And I just realized, all right, you know what? Wait a second. If a morning routine is supposed to help set your day positively, and instead you're completely anxious, irritated, overwhelmed, anxiety driven, this is not going to work out. So I've realized that there are things that I do want to start the day with, and I wouldn't call it a routine per se, but it's like those are the things that I know I need to do before I get anything else done that are important to me to set myself up correctly for the day. So that is what I would do in the morning. Now, I have something much more extensive at night though, because I've always been much more of a nighttime person, I guess. I'm an aspiring morning person, I feel, but not that I'm you do what you got to do, but at night I do spend a lot more time where I'm checking in with myself. That's when I'm doing my writing. I'm listening to the podcast, making sure that I'm feeding my mind and myself with things that if I were to subconsciously reflect on, that's like the energy I'm giving to myself going into nighttime. But another thing I've also really realized is I don't ever want to be mad at myself for not doing something when it comes to a routine. And I feel like, on TikTok and all these places, you keep seeing everyone like screaming about the importance of having routines. And that's the only way you can have discipline. And I just feel like it's not a one size fits all approach for everyone. You have to figure out what makes sense for you and how you can get there without looking at what everyone else is doing. Because not everyone needs to do 87 things in the morning, right? Or 87 things at night. Maybe your night routine is like washing your face and using your favorite red therapy wand while you listen to a podcast. That is often me, before I write. And yeah, so I think that we need to really stop making people feel bad for things they may not be doing when that's not even what would make them productive.
So. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, this has been a real treat. I'm glad that, I was able to get to know you all a little bit better and, share this with our community. What would you say is, what do you want to be remembered for?
I would say for how I made people feel. And like, if I ever had a conversation with you, and I planted a seed, about how to make a more positive impact in the world, I hope that that's what you would remember. Or if you were having a hard day, just remembering that, someone was there that like listened to you and like showed up for you and held space for you.
So, yeah, I agree to that. And also just someone that lived her life on her own terms and lived like, fully authentically, not something, out of the norm, like whatever made me happy, whatever was like my full self-expression. I lived that to the fullest, and I encouraged anybody else to maybe use, look at me as a sense of motivation if they're feeling like out of place and they feel that they're not capable of doing something, or they use like something that's very unique and special and they embrace that and they move forward in their life and they offer that gift to the world.
It's great. And where can everyone follow you?
So our company is at Delikate Rayn, and that's Delikate with a K, and Rayn is Rayne. And then if you want to check out the personal life, it's at Megan Comey. Delicate Rayn is on all socials though. So learn something there for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.